All right, here now with Congresswoman Susan Brooks. Congresswoman Brooks, I want to get your reaction to some of the moves that the state has been making lately, including closing Indiana K through 12 schools through the end of the year. Not a surprising move that Indiana schools are closing. What's your reaction and your message to citizens here across the state?
The governor and State Superintendent Jennifer McCormick, I think, really have had no choice. We haven't flattened the curve yet, and it's incredibly disappointing, particularly for seniors in high school, also those kids leaving middle school, the 8th graders, and then those leaving elementary and going on to middle school. Those are milestone years for those kids. I know I've already thought about the 8th grade classes I would have visited with in Washington, D.C. this spring, and those trips aren't happening. So I'm very sad, but I also want to commend the teachers. You know, I'm the daughter of and the mother of a teacher. And my son, who is teaching up in Alaska, it's a challenging time for our teachers. They're working incredibly hard to stay connected with their students. And so it's a whole new world, but I think it's very wise. It's a sad decision, but it's a very wise and I think prudent decision to cancel school.
Congresswoman Brooks, we talk about flattening the curve. Are we doing enough in that regard? Do we need to be doing even more?
Well, I think we have to continue to do what we're doing. We have to, and again, I like how the governor refers to it as hunker down Hoosiers. We have to stay at home. We have to really implement social distancing in an incredibly significant way. Yesterday, even when I went out to get the mail, I thought, we've got all these frontline workers, from postal workers to grocery store clerks to pharmacists, that have to do their job, that we count on them to do their job. We hope and pray that they stay safe. But we also just have to do all those things, the hand washing, the disinfecting, and staying away. Although I do think it's important to get out and get some fresh air. Every day, luckily, we've got this beautiful spring weather. And so I think it's important for a mental health break as much as anything to get out of your home, your apartment, and get a little bit of fresh air. But that's the only way that we know, until we have a vaccine, quite frankly, that we have to be very careful. Now, the government, I understand, just produced, the FDA just approved a new test for the antibodies. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. It's a company called Celex, and they've just approved the first antibody test, because we are concerned and we really want to find out who's already had it, because many people have so many different kinds of symptoms. Those people who maybe already have it, who have a probable immunity to it, maybe eventually in the very near future, we can loosen up some of these restrictions and get some people back to work if they've already had this horrible virus.
Let's talk about the economic impact. Obviously, many people are now filing for unemployment. I know you've also been looking into ways we can help our small businesses. Will we need to do more? Will Congress need to take additional action beyond the 3 relief packages that have already been passed into law?
Well, I did. I flew back to Washington last week and voted for the largest and the most historic aid package the country has ever seen. It's something we had to do. The $2.2 trillion, and then unleashing other trillions of dollars to help small businesses. Almost half of Americans are employed by small businesses. And starting on Friday, April 3rd, small businesses can go to the SBA, or can go to banks and lenders, because the SBA is pushing out the Paycheck Protection Program for those small businesses. It's to try to protect their payroll for up to 8 weeks, as well as providing them funding for rent, utilities, mortgages, other expenses, the paid sick leave. We are trying to make sure that those small businesses, and I know many people, both employed by small businesses and who own small businesses, they are struggling immensely. 6.5 million Americans have filed for unemployment, when we were just, coming and enjoying, I think, the best economy we've ever seen. And so we want to make sure those small businesses are there after this pandemic really begins to subside. So I do hope that people reach out, look at the SBA.gov website. They have stood up programs in record time, brand new programs that are now becoming available, effective actually on April 3rd, Friday, April 3rd. And so hopefully people will take advantage of that. There are other SBA programs that they can look to as well. And then of course, we added significant benefits through the unemployment system. And so the Department of Workforce Development, they are having a Facebook Live event next week. And so people should look on Indiana's Department of Workforce Development to find out about filing unemployment if their jobs are no longer there.
You're taking part in an event Friday with Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett, a teleconferencing event. Tell us about that and how you hope that may help some Hoosiers.
Well, we're talking the AARP is reaching out to its members to provide seniors information. So Mayor Hogsett is going to be on the line. Dr. Virginia Kane, I have been an admirer of Dr. Kane's for decades. We are so fortunate that Dr. Kane is leading our public health efforts in Marion County, but also she's a leader in the country. And so a lot of public health folks around the state look to Dr. Kane for what she is doing. But we're going to go online today with, or on Friday with AARP leading the call to seniors to try to provide them information, to make sure they're taking this incredibly seriously. They need to understand what the precautions are they need to take, but also what benefits and how the relief is coming through the federal government. People who live on fixed income, Social Security in particular, will be eligible for those individual rebate checks that the government is providing through our CARE Acts. Individuals can get up to $1,200 of rebates if they have an income of under $75,000. They can get $2,400 for married couples, $500 for dependent children, kids 16 and under. So we are also trying to provide direct aid through a rebate check program, and we'll be providing information about that.
During a crisis like this, politics has been somewhat pushed to the side while people try to work together and figure out how to solve this crisis. But of course, it is also an election year. We've seen the Indiana primary delayed now until June. Are you confident we can conduct a primary safely in the month of June? Also, you're retiring at the end of the year. Will you be backing any of the candidates in the race for your seat ahead of that primary in June?
I have tremendous confidence in Secretary of State Connie Lawson, and she and the governor, I think, will make the appropriate decision as to whether or not the primary can go forward on June 2nd or whether or not it may need to be pushed back again. And then our state election commission will make decisions about how the election will be conducted. But it's fundamental to our democracy that we have elections, and I'm certain that they will take place. When and how, I will leave that to the state officials to determine. But I think that, and with respect to my primary, there are many, many people who have chosen to run in my primary. Same thing actually up in Northwest in Pete Viskowski's open seat. Many people have chosen to run in that seat as well. And at this point in time, I do not plan to endorse any of the candidates. I want them to work hard in communicating the best they can with the voters in the 5th. And we'll leave it up to the voters to decide who should go forth in the general election.
Finally, your message for Hoosiers across central Indiana as we continue to hunker down in these difficult times.
Well, I want to thank all Hoosiers who are sacrificing, but no one's sacrificing actually more than our healthcare providers and our first responders. All of the people who are providing medical care, whether it's at clinics, whether it's at hospitals and in long-term care facilities, they truly are on the front line, and we must do our part. They ask us to stay at home while they stay there and take care of patients. And I think we must do that in order to flatten this curve. And for the first responders, the police, fire, EMS, and others who are out on the streets protecting us and aiding our citizens, their sacrifice, we cannot thank them enough. But I think we can get through this. This is the worst pandemic in a century. We're all going to look back and know, that we had a part to play. We know that there are things that people can do. We know there's still needs a significant blood shortage. So we need people to consider donating blood. They have found ways to make sure that that is safe. make sure that our food pantries are full. I love what the United Way of Central Indiana, the United Ways have done around the state. We need to support those social service agencies that are doing so much for citizens. We are trying to make sure that, and we in our bills have funded more funding to make sure that families don't go hungry, and to make sure that people aren't evicted during this time period. There are so many things that we have to do to come together. We realize that our neighbors, our families are suffering. Be kind, be patient, help each other, keep in touch with each other, particularly the elderly and those who are shut in. Make sure you're calling them, Zooming them, communicating, actually maybe write a letter, particularly to our seniors who can't really have contact with anybody. So I love that the governor put out in all together, or in this together, hashtag in this together, that Lilly and the Pacers and the Colts and Purdue and IU and everyone pulling together. We are in this together. We're going to get through this together.
All right, Congresswoman Susan Brooks, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Stay healthy and safe.
You as well.